everybody, and welcome to another edition of Talk with Toscano. We got a big edition here, and we're going to talk about Bond 2025, which proposes a new high school and two new elementary schools. So, without further ado, we'll turn it over to Superintendent Roland Toscano.
Thank you, Brandon. And thanks to all of you who have joined us for the conversation today. Obviously, as we're all aware, we continue to see a lot of growth in development in the district. Our school enrollment continues to meet the projections that our demographer has presented consistently over the last 5 years. In many cases, the actual enrollment has exceeded the projections, which have been relatively conservative. For example, Honor Elementary, the demographer projected would open at around 675 students, and we're over 800 students in year one. So we know that our enrollment impact because of the development is going to mean that our school district's going to double its enrollment in the next 8 years. We currently have an enrollment of about 11,600 students and anticipate that exceeding 25,000 by 2033. The story continues to be development. I think the important part is to pay attention to where the heat map or concentration of growth in the district is. 5 years ago when we really started to see rooftops, the majority of that development was in the north sector of the district, north of Highway 87. Today, when looking at the development heat map, you see that there is still a significant concentration of development in the I-10-1604 corridor. But more than that, south of Highway 87, you see a lot more development today. And that'll be important when we talk about the sites of the future schools that we need to address this. The story continues to be development, and that the majority of the new development are single-family homes. Many of the single-family home developments are starter homes, if you will, for first-time home buyers, meaning young parents, young families, and school-age children. So they yield a lot of children per household that will matriculate into our school system. We also are seeing the expansion of multifamily apartment complexes. Multifamily apartment complexes also yield a large number of students per unit, which again will continue to impact enrollment in our schools. When we look at the scenarios of growth, this is something that our demographer has presented consistently over the last 5 years. And the dotted line in this particular representation signifies the moderate projection, which is what we have adhered to consistently over the last 5 years. And when looking at that, you can see that by the end of the demographic period in 2033, we're projecting around 25 to 26,000 students by the end of the demographic period. Conservatively, of course, in an accelerated growth scenario, which tends to be the trend today, it would be closer to 28,000 students. And in the worst case scenario, if you will, we're looking at just under 23,000 students. So all in, we would still be more than double enrollment by 2033. And keep in mind, this is considering not just the rooftops and the developments with dirt that has been moved. This is what's also happening below ground that has been permitted, platted, infrastructure is in place, and we'll see dirt moving and rooftops coming. So it's all of those developments combined. When we look at the impact on the enrollment within our schools, and you look at our elementary schools, when you look at this table, you see the highlighted areas for the respective campuses. And what that indicates is that that is the year which each of those schools will reach 120% capacity. That means that every classroom is full. That would be 100% capacity. But in addition to that, every common space is also utilized when available throughout the day for instruction, the cafeteria, the library, the gymnasium, for example. It means that all space that can possibly be utilized for teaching and learning is being utilized at 120%. So next year, Harmony will be at 120% capacity. Believe it or not, Tradition by 2027, 2028 will once again be at 120% capacity. When we opened Honor this year, it relieved Tradition, which had begun to approach 1,200 students enrolled prior to the opening of Honor. Honor Elementary School by 28-29, even though we just opened it this year, will be at 120% capacity, and Oak Crest will be over 1,100 students at 120% capacity. The high school has been something that the community has spoken loudly about with regard to its size and student enrollment. And as you can see, the base high school, the core, is going to reach capacity at 4,633 students by 28-29. But the high school also includes South Campus, which is the old Oak Crest, which is included in those numbers. But in addition to that, it includes the John Glenn Annex, which houses the Cass Lead High School program, which will have 363 students projected by 28-29 with a capacity of 600 in that building. But taken together by 28-29, you can see clearly that the high school will have over 5,000 students, which is 120% of the capacity. So to solve those problems, the board and the community that did the study have determined that the essential needs that the community really can't live without based on the enrollment in our schools is to relieve the impact of the enrollment in each of the schools that I just spoke about. So the solution is to build 2 more elementary schools, one in the north sector of the district and one in the south sector of the district, as well as a second high school. So with regard to the location of each of those campuses, the locations are located in regions that would provide relief for adjustments to school boundaries for the campuses that I mentioned earlier that will be reaching 120% capacity. So the school in the north will be just inside the I-10 corridor off 1604 and 1346, just inside 1346, just inside the loop. You'll see indicated there by the yellow square. That is a parcel of land that will be used for an elementary school in a development. The benefit to that is infrastructure comes with the parcel of land, which means that there's not a lot of site work and infrastructure that needs to be part of the construction project, which allows us to expedite construction and meet the timeline necessary should the bond pass in May. The South Elementary School will be in the region around W.W. White Road and Hildebrandt Road. We are indicating just off of Hildebrandt Road. We are in negotiations for several parcels of land in that area. We anticipate closing on one of those by the end of this school year. That location is beneficial because it will allow us to adjust school boundaries and provide the necessary relief for Harmony Elementary School in particular, but as well as the other schools in the area. And again, this will also likely be in a development, which means the infrastructure is there and will allow us to expedite the construction. Now, because of the heat map that I presented earlier in the conversation, the most rapid development currently is in the south sector of the district, which is why the second high school being proposed is going to be built on the south sector of our community. Off of Highway 181 and Donnock Road, at the intersection of Old Corpus Christi Road, you'll see indicated there a 120-acre parcel of land, which will be the site of high school number 2, and in the future will be the site of middle school number 4. Looking at the way the campus will be laid out on the property, you can see there that the high school and all of its amenities will fit on that property. To the west, you'll see, actually the north, you'll see space there for the future middle school, about 35 acres. The issue with a high school is that the design of a high school like this takes about 18 months, about a year and a half. The problem with waiting for a bond to pass and beginning design is that puts us a year and a half behind. And as I indicated earlier, the high school will reach 120% capacity by 28-29. So the board used a little foresight to commission the architect to begin design with staff and with the community about a year ago. So we're about a year or almost 12 months into the design process. And so I want to give you just a little bit of insight there. This is a footprint of the first floor of the academic building. And what I want to point out is the color scheme there indicates the different programs. And if you look at the lime green or CTE program, what I want to point out is you'll see that there is a phase 2 CTE and academic facility that is part of this design. The design of this high school will be for 2,200 students, but the core or common spaces like the library, the gyms, the cafeteria are designed for 3,200. Phase 1 will be the campus for 2,200. Phase 2 will be designed at this time as well, with the infrastructure as part of this construction program to add a 1,000-seat academic wing that is designed so that there's adjacency to like programming. So it will be designed today. Infrastructure will be part of the construction project program. And when the time comes, the community can consider then when the additional wing makes sense to essentially plug in to this design. And then the second floor just also indicates the science classrooms there in the phase 1 that is adjacent to the science classrooms in phase 2. Again, just want to point out that it's being purpose built in the future based on the design today. Here is a 3D rendering of the campus on the property. You'll notice that the athletic facilities are in the back of the design, and that there's not a football stadium. There is a football field, a sub-varsity competition field, and all-level practice facility, but the stadium at East Central High School will be a shared stadium. You also don't see an agri-science complex. That's because we're going to expand the current agri-science complex here at East Central High School, with the idea that that will also be a shared facility as well. This is an exterior elevation of the design of the high school. And what I want to point out there is that the community and board have been very clear that we want really durable facilities that are cost effective to construct and that are future proof, meaning that the spaces allow us to adapt into those spaces any programming for teaching and learning into the future. And so this uses tilt wall construction, which is again very durable, very cost effective, very similar to what we did in 2008 with the academic building at the current high school. And the design of the classroom spaces within it, again, are future proof. They're very flexible and adaptable to different modalities of learning into the future. So in summary, we're looking at a new high school for $208 million, 2 elementary schools around $50 million for a combined bond proposition of $309,150,000. The tax impact will be a maximum of 8 cents. Keep in mind that the board by law cannot guarantee a maximum tax impact of 8 cents and exceed that. So those projections are very conservative. The finance structure is such that it kind of kicks the impact down the road in financing, because the community wanted to make sure that every citizen today and every citizen who moves into East Central community into the future has to share in this tax burden fairly and equitably. And the bonds will not be sold until the funds are necessary. So typically the board uses 3 different bond sales over the course of the project program, so that again the tax burden is incrementally distributed out over time. Again, the maximum impact will be 8 cents. That's the worst case scenario, and it will not be realized until 2027, incrementally up to that point. On the right side of this slide, I'm just pointing out that as I mentioned before, the 8 cents is the worst case scenario. In our current bond program, at this stage of the construction program, we had indicated to the community that we anticipated a tax impact of 6 cents, but currently it's actually 3 cents. And that is consistent with the trend over the course of history of East Central ISD's bond programs. So we communicate what we believe would be the worst case scenario. We execute the bond construction program, And at no point have we ever actually reached the maximum impact. And so we would anticipate that this experience will be similar. So what does that mean for a homeowner with an average property value of $280,000? By 2027, if 8 cents is actually realized, it'll be about $13 a month at that point in 2027, or $157 a year. So keep in mind, 65 and over citizens who have had their taxes frozen upon turning 65, that rate can be decreased, but it will never increase regardless of what happens with any bond propositions. Disabled veterans have earned the right to have the benefit of no property value or no property taxes, and therefore any bond proposition that would pass in the future would not affect disabled veterans' property taxes. And then lastly, if you're a property owner and the value of your property is $100,000 or less, it is possible that you do not pay property taxes due to exemptions, and therefore, if this bond were to pass, it would not affect your taxes as well. So fortunately, the current Board of Trustees and generations that preceded even me in this role of trustees have been really good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We have 23 straight years of superior first ratings. We have never failed an audit, and this past year our first rating was a perfect 100, which I believe is the third time in the last 5 years. So our tax rate is the lowest in 19 area school districts, and it has decreased consistently year over year since 2014. And just to illustrate that, in 2017, 2018, the total tax rate, which is a combination of interest and sinking and maintenance and operations, is $1.34. Was $1.34. Today it's 88 cents. And as I mentioned before, it's the lowest in Bexar County. And outside of Alamo Heights, which is a recapture property rich district, who I believe approximately 60% of their local tax revenue gets recaptured by the state and redistributed. We are the only school district that is under $1 for a total tax rate. So not only are we the lowest tax rate, but by far. So I get asked a lot in the community, what happens if the bond doesn't pass? Well, what doesn't happen is development stops. What doesn't happen is enrollment doesn't continue to grow in all of our schools. Therefore, we have to address classroom space. Because schools that reach 120% capacity or exceed that means that we don't have places for kids to learn, much less optimal or adequate spaces for kids to learn. And so our plan B, if you will, is to move into portable installation. And there's a lot of challenges with portables. I think you as a community can assume what many of those are, but they're expensive. And they don't necessarily provide a facility that we can utilize long term. We would need to start with 14 portables, which would give us 28 additional classrooms. Those portables would be at Harmony, Honor, and East Central High School in phase 1 of portable deployment. Currently, to get a portable purchased, the site prepped, delivered, and then connected, infrastructure, PA systems, alarm systems, security cameras, internet. We're talking about $250,000 per portable. Phase 1, we are anticipating will be about $3.5 million. And that money is likely to have to come out of our maintenance and operations budget. And the challenge with that is that 80% of that budget pays for our staff, for recruitment and retention of the very best teachers and leaders for our kids. And our per student allotment has not changed since 2019, regardless of inflation. So we have a strained M&O budget, as do all school districts in the state of Texas. And so this would further challenge our ability to remain solvent. So that being said, the ballot is one proposition. We got a lot of feedback in November that it was confusing with 4 propositions, which we agree. There were some athletic facility improvements on the November bond program, which by statute required the number of propositions that we put forward. It was a lot for the community to understand. The ballot in November was very busy. There was a lot of activity on that ballot, and East Central's propositions were down ballot. They were the last. So we had a lot of undervotes, meaning people didn't get to the last part of the ballot before they turned their ballot in. And for young voters who had never voted before, four propositions was a little confusing. They weren't always sure if they had the opportunity to vote for each proposition for or against, and some voters chose one to vote for or against and didn't act on the other three. And so for those reasons, we feel like one proposition is a little easier to understand. It's certainly easier for us to inform and educate around. And so the bond proposition on the ballot is straightforward. It's for $309 million for a new high school and 2 elementary schools. And the community has the opportunity to vote for or against the one proposition. Early voting starts April 22nd, runs through April 29th. There are 4 sites in our community at the administration office, Elmendorf City Hall, Schaefer Library, and St. Hedwig City Hall. And election day is on May 3rd. So with that, I'd be really happy to answer any questions the community has at this time.
First, why was the site for the high school chosen? Will traffic be adjusted?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the site for high school number 2 was chosen because of where the population density, development density is happening right now. While there is a significant amount of development in the north sector of the district, when you look at the heat map of development happening now and over the next 4 or 5 years, it's south of Highway 87. And so for that reason, the south location was chosen. Future high school number 3 will be off of 1604 and 1346 with some adjacency to the elementary school that you'll be considering in the May proposition. Some property there that the district owns as well. As far as traffic around the new high school, obviously Old Corpus Christi Road and Donnup Road aren't developed in a way that can accommodate a school that size with the traffic that accompanies it. So with any construction project, TxDOT requires a traffic impact study and requires improvements based on the impact of traffic because of the new development. So all of our schools that we've built recently, we'll see things like turn lanes, acceleration and deceleration lanes. We might see flashing lights. We might see traffic signs. We might see stoplights. And so as we continue the design process and as TxDOT completes the traffic impact study, those requirements will be implemented into the design to make sure that Donnup Road and Old Corpus Christi Road can account for the increased traffic that the new high school will bring.
Here's another good one. If there are more houses being built in the district, doesn't that mean the district makes more money?
You know, it's a really confusing thing to understand how we can all as taxpayers see all of the development that surrounds us, all of the new rooftops, all of the new residents moving in, all of the new taxpayers that are generating revenue for our school district. But the way that school funding works in Texas is that we get $6,140, the basic allotment per student, which is then supplemented with some additional funds based on different programs from state and federal dollars. But fundamentally, our funding is what it is. And as new residents move in and new local revenue is generated, what it means is that the state share is reduced proportionately. So once upon a time, East Central ISD local revenue paid for about 40% of our budget, and the state picked up 60%. Today, it's more like the opposite of that. Local revenue generated accounts for about 60% of our budget, and state revenue more like 40% of the budget. And so again, the total amount of revenue that ends up being realized as our budget never changes. So new houses being built, more taxpayers moving in does not mean more money for the district. What it does mean is the tax burden on taxpayers for additional debt is reduced. So, for example, $309 million will impact our school district about 8 cents. Other surrounding communities who may put forward propositions for lots less than that will be asking their taxpayer to consider an impact much higher than 8 cents. So, because of the number of residents, more residents sharing in that debt burden, it does reduce our individual impact on that burden. But again, it does not generate more revenue for the school district.
This is one I hear all the time. My property values keep rising. Doesn't that mean more money for the district?
So, another confusing thing for all of us as property owners is that the district keeps talking about a low tax rate and keeps talking about how our tax rate has been reduced year over year consistently for the last decade, better part of the last decade. And yet, when I look at my tax bill every year, particularly in recent years, my school tax payment is larger. So, how could that be? And what it amounts to is that our property tax rate, which is what the district sets, has been reduced. So the amount of tax that we pay per $100 of value has been reduced and is the lowest at 88 cents of all 19 area school districts. But our property values in our community the last several years have gone up between 14 and 17% consistently year over year. So as my property value increases, even though the tax rate decreases, it is likely that my overall tax payment for school taxes goes up. The school district does not have anything to do with setting property values. And so as our property values increase and our school tax rate goes down, again, sometimes, if not most of the time, when we see 14 and 17 or more percent increases in value, despite a low school district tax rate, our taxes are going to go up.
And with everything going on in Texas with the vouchers and everything, do you believe that charter schools and private schools will have an impact on enrollment?
So, one thing that's been a challenge and continues to be as we study enrollment trends in our district with our demographer is that we don't always have specific information about when or if existing charter schools are going to be authorized for expansion. And we also don't always know when new charter schools are going to be constructed and opened. That information is just not available to the public. But what we do know is over time and currently how many students are enrolled in charter schools or private schools in the San Antonio area that reside in East Central Independent School District. And using those trends over time, we can project the number of students into the future going forward in this demographic period that are going to continue to attend school outside of the district. And so those numbers are in our projections. And in fact, with our fast growth scenario, in terms of space, it's actually been beneficial that there are so many charter schools and private schools in our area. In terms of vouchers that seem to be on our horizon, it's really difficult to project how that's going to affect enrollment. But all projections seem to indicate that the enrollment is not going to be impacting public schools as much as it could be impacting public charter schools who have already chosen an option other than their neighborhood public schools, because it may then provide the subsidy that makes up the difference for them to be able to afford private school tuition. And then those who are already in private schools would have a subsidy to supplement the cost of tuition. So the projections, the experts, if you will, seem to indicate that the initial impact on enrollment in public schools will not be significant, if at all. But again, based on our moderate enrollment projections and the developments that are so far along that no matter what happens, they're coming, we don't have any reason to believe that even with vouchers, even with prospective expansion of area charters or even the addition of new charters, that our classrooms and our schools aren't going to continue to exceed capacity as projected.
Here's one I hear all the time. How come the land developers don't pay for a new school or new residents to the area?
We get this question all the time, and as a tax-paying citizen, it would be fantastic if developers had some contingencies built in that would require them to support the surrounding school districts that their developments are impacting. But the business model is such that the developers move to where the best opportunities for development exist, to the bottom line. Where are profit margins um, going to be best realized? The city of San Antonio is seeing rapid population growth and is projected to be one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. And so the city of San Antonio has to address its needs for housing. And so the investments in infrastructure have come to our community in recent years and have laid the ground for fostering rapid development. The fact of the matter is, from my view, from our view, the city of San Antonio needs developers more than developers need the city of San Antonio. My opinion, what I'm observing, is that there's if the city of San Antonio or the county were to require developers to give land, for example, or contribute financially to the impact and subsequent cost of facilities, it would affect the bottom line for developers, and they would just move to other areas of the state or country where it is more fruitful for their business model. And so, for those reasons, the conditions right now aren't favorable. Once upon a time, uh, developers regularly, when they came into our community, would reach out and ask if we were interested in a parcel of land for a future school, because there was benefit for a school being adjacent or in those developments, for them to be able to sell homes and build out their development. But today, those developments are pre-selling, selling, and filling up without us being present. And so, again, the conditions just are not favorable for developers to be required, much less incentivized, um, to pay a share, if you will.
And final question, will we be able to staff these new schools?
Staffing schools in Texas is really tough. Um, Unfortunately, careers in teaching don't have the same esteem that they once did. Almost 30 years ago, when I began a career as an educator, in my social circles, when folks would talk about, what they do for a living, when they got to me and I said, I'm a teacher, folks looked at me with really bright eyes and said, man, that's awesome. You know, thank you for what you do. What a fantastic profession, and what a difference you can make. Wow. And today, in the same circles, when I and fellow educators talk about what we do, we get pobrecito. Uh, Man, thank you. We appreciate you. I don't know how you do it. Um, and it's difficult to recruit young talent into the profession nowadays because the best talent out there has other options, and education isn't as esteemed as it once was. And so, for that reason, the State Board of Education Teacher Certification Database, year over year for the last several years, has seen more people retire from education and leave the database than are matriculating into the database. And so, the population of certified candidates is not growing as fast as the demand. So all of us are competing for less and less top talent. And so we have to be very thoughtful about the way we develop talent. So we've got very comprehensive grow your own initiatives where we are developing a pipeline of teachers. We have partnerships with 3 universities in the San Antonio area to get rising teacher prep students into our schools as residents a year ahead of time, where they're working alongside some of our master teachers, and gives us access to them as they graduate, gives us first access to the top talent coming out of ed prep programs. We're also seeing a rising number of candidates come out of alternative certification pathways, and don't have the same development and readiness to step into the classroom. So we have to double down on our onboarding, orientation and teacher prep for first year teachers to ensure that when they step into our classrooms, they're ready day one and our kids don't get less than. And in addition to that, I talked recently with the community about some major shifts at Legacy Middle School that are allowing us to implement a model that offers additional compensation for teachers who are getting results, teachers who are showing up every day, teachers who are bringing incentive allotment designations with them because they're exceptional teachers who serve students well and get results. And we're able to recruit them into our school district. Along with that, we are one of 10 school districts in the state of Texas working with the Texas Education Agency to begin to move towards a strategic compensation model, which incentivizes high performing teachers with compensation. So currently in our compensation model, you get paid based on your years of service, not so much your assignment and not so much considerate of your performance. But in the future, those who are the best and brightest and highest performing will make the most. The intention is to compensate the best in ways that incentivize them to not only stay here, come here, stay here, but also to stay in the classroom. That you will not in the future need to matriculate outside of the classroom to have upward mobility and to make a better living. You'll be able to make a significant living being a high performing teacher in our classrooms here in East Central and Penn School District. So we're doing a lot of innovative things we've never done before to recruit the best from a declining pool of top talent and keep them here in East Central ISD.
All right, Superintendent Toscano, thank you so much for your time, all this great information. Do you have any final thoughts as we sign off?
Yeah, so thank you for being engaged in trying to understand the challenges that we're facing as a school community with enrollment growth. And thank you for the thoughtful questions. Thank you for, again, always your feedback, your concerns. They inform our work as we continually progress, make things more efficient, more effective, always transparent, but ultimately always focused on our kids. And so together, we can ensure that our kids are taken care of and that our school system thrives. So thank you for your engagement and continued partnership.